homelessness. And we are recording this meeting. My name is Kevin Lee. I am the Senior Programs Manager here at the Coalition. We have with us Allison Eisinger, our Executive Director, Hallie Willis, our Community Policy Manager, Danielle Palmer-Friedman, our Communications Lead, and Noah Gucher, our Operations and Systems Manager, is here as well. And later we'll have another staff announcement as well. We are very, very happy to have you with us today. The Coalition on Homelessness is a member-based organization, and this meeting is intended to bring people together. That's service providers, community and government partners, and allies alike. We come together every month on the third Thursday in the spirit of building community, exchanging important and timely information, offering professional development skills and resources. And last but not least, we are working to create a sense of solidarity amongst ourselves. So we're so glad to have you with us today. Hallie, if you or Danielle move us to the next slide, it's the What We Do slide. We have this wonderful slide that goes into a little bit more detail about what we do and who we are, and I encourage you to take a moment and take a look. As you heard with the robot voice earlier, we are recording this meeting. It will live in our YouTube channel. So if I could have somebody also drop the link to our YouTube channel into the chat. And that way folks can bookmark that. Really, I mean, the easiest way is to just follow and subscribe. And that way you'll get all those updates if you're a YouTube watcher. But the main point is we record all of our meetings and all of our trainings. So there's a ton of information in there for service providers and community, of course. So we really encourage you to subscribe to the channel and consider it really a great resource for service providers. We do love to see faces. So if you're in a place where you are able to put your camera on and that feels appropriate today, we love to see faces. I always say you can turn it on when you want. You can feel free to turn it off. That's fine too. We would be happy to see you. You have the ability to change your name in the little Zoom box. So we'd like to know who you are, what your pronouns are, and how you might be connected to the Coalition or this work. So for example, I adjusted my name. It says Kevin Lee. My pronouns are they and he, and I'm with the Coalition on Homelessness. If you're with the media today, we really just ask that you quote and pull information from either Coalition staff or official presenters. And if there's someone else that you're hoping to connect with, please reach out to contact@homelessinfo.org, and we will connect you with that agency. And if I can have one of our staff put in the link for our email sign up into the chat. Of course, you may already have it as you're already here, but we know that Zoom links get shared and we want folks to have direct access. So you can share that link with the rest of your colleagues and communities. And on that note, Hallie, if we can move back to the agenda slide. We are very excited. We've got a wonderful agenda today. We have a fantastic guest presenter, Casey Burton from Catholic Community Services Tenant Law Center, is here to give us information on resources for low-income tenants and tenants at risk of eviction. So we're very excited to welcome Casey here. Afterwards, we will, as always, hear from Hallie Willis, our Community Policy Manager, regarding some federal and local advocacy. As you know, there's a lot of important things for us to take action on. Then we'll get a chance to get some more useful and helpful voter information on the upcoming primary election. For example, what's on the ballot and also deadlines. Very important to keep in mind. And to close, we will, as always, have time and space for member announcements. We invite you to share what you have going on in your world and with everyone else here. Okay, so switching gears back to our introduction, I would like to ask someone to volunteer to read out our mission, vision, and values. If you feel like you can do that today, just go ahead and raise your hand. And we'll give it a moment for people to consider.
I'm happy to read it for you.
Thank you, Catherine. Go ahead.
We mobilize our community to challenge systemic causes of homelessness and advocate for housing justice. That's the mission. Vision, a region that acts on a shared sense of responsibility to ensure that everyone has a home, and values equity, justice, collective action.
Thank you, Catherine.
You're welcome.
As many of you know, this is a longstanding tradition of the coalition to read out our mission, vision, and values, because it's not just words. This is the work that we all do and put into action. So with that, I want to move us forward with our announcements. Our first announcement is a quick introduction of our newest staff member, Megan Piotrowski. Megan is our summer program associate, and she comes to us with some amazing experience in voter registration across the country and voter volunteer coordination. I believe Megan actually might be busy right now, helping out with some of our volunteer coordination and voter registration. So if she ends up hopping back on, we'll have her come on camera and introduce herself. But we're very excited to have Megan with us. Our next announcement is a call for volunteers for Project Cool. As you may have heard, we are preparing over 1,800 backpacks this year for children experiencing homelessness. And also Project Cool is back to our pre-COVID form of preparing backpacks, stuffing backpacks together in community. And so we need your help to make it happen. Specifically, we're needing help on the first day for setup, and then the last day, of course. It's always helpful to have extra hands for cleanup and inventory. That first day is on July 22nd. That's next Tuesday, so it's just coming up here in a few days for the morning shift. The link is in the chat right now. Yep, there you go, and specific shifts that are in need. You may not necessarily have time to make it out yourself, but if you have people in your communities, and colleagues alike, please feel free to share that link. Okay, moving forward, our next announcement is about next month's general membership meeting. So we typically meet on the third Thursday, and historically we've taken a break during August, and we will do that in 2025. But don't worry, we won't leave you alone. We are actually going to be replacing that meeting time with our Helping Homeless Students McKinney-Vento 101 training that we do every year. So mark your calendar. You already have this time blocked out. So if it's for you or your staff, we have our McKinney-Vento 101 Helping Homeless Students training series. This training series is supported by our wonderful partner, Caleb Blau. She's been doing this for a handful of years and is now actually with Building Changes. That training will also include a virtual resource fair where different resources supporting homeless children and school districts will be able to share about what their organizations do. And of course, we will have guest presenters, McKinney-Vento liaisons from schools themselves, all intended to help service providers advocate and navigate systems for the support of the children and families they work with. The next announcement, moving forward, our ABD HEN training. So that is coming up. It's on September 10th. It was originally scheduled for July 30th, but a couple months ago we switched it to September 10th. In case that's still on your calendars, we know this training is generally well attended. We already have a number of folks who have registered. If you are working with folks who are accessing or eligible or have lost access to ABD and HEN benefits, this is absolutely the training for you. This is done in partnership with Benefits Legal Assistance and Catholic Community Services HEN program. So the link should be in the chat. There it is. Again, it's now on September 10th, and it takes place at the same time or same time as our morning meetings, 9 a.m. to 11. Last couple announcements. For our South King County providers, I just want to remind folks that we convene once a month for the South King County Forum on Homelessness. It meets the first Wednesday of every month from 9 to 10:30 over Zoom. You can email Danielle at homelessinfo.org or raise your hand and put your email in the chat if you'd like to be added to that listserv. This meeting is co-facilitated by Layla Wilson, the Human Service Coordinator with the City of Federal Way. And if you're hoping to join that party, join this meeting, we're actually kind of starting anew with our first in-person. We don't generally meet on Zoom, but we're starting with an in-person meeting in August. That's in Federal Way at Federal Way City Hall building, and that is in the afternoon from 2 to 3:30 p.m. I believe we have Layla Wilson's email to put into the chat if you have questions about that, but really just reach out if you're in any of those avenues, if you're interested in getting involved or attending our South King County Forum on Homelessness meetings. Our last announcement is about our voting rights events. So as you know, we host many voting rights events as we lead up to the voting rights and registration events as we lead up to the elections. And if anyone would like to request that we go to your program site and support with voting rights and voting registration for your community, accessing services, we are seeking more dates in July as we lead up to the primary. But also in the near future, we're really trying to fill out our calendar and booking dates for September and October leading up to the general election on November 5th. Okay. That was a lot of announcements, and so very happy to move forward. Hallie Willis will introduce our guest presenter. Hallie?
Good morning, everyone. It is good to see so many of your beautiful faces. I'm very happy to introduce Casey Burton, who's joining us today from the Catholic Community Services Tenant Law Center. The Tenant Law Center provides a lot of great resources, including legal help for tenants who are at risk of eviction or who are having a conflict with their landlord. We are interested in this, of course, at the Coalition on Homelessness because many people become homeless following an eviction. And we are in a period right now of really, really sky high eviction filings in Seattle and in King County. And along with extremely high costs of rent, high costs of housing, this is creating a really bad environment for people who are falling into homelessness. So the Tenant Law Center does some really great work to help folks stay housed. And with that, I'll pass it over to Casey and I will unlock your ability to share your screen.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, good morning, everyone. Oh, and still working. I promise I have slides.
And you should be able to share your screen now, Casey. Do you see it?
I do, yes.
Awesome.
It was mad at me for a second, but technology usually is.
Okay.
All right. Well, please enter presentation and. All right. Are you guys seeing the presentation or are you seeing the?
We see like your presenter view.
I thought
so. You might want to swap, like go to display settings and swap. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. How about now? Does that look great?
That's good. We got it.
Okay, perfect. Great. Excellent. Only took 2 tries. Not bad for early morning. Well, not that early, but good morning. As Hallie said, I'm Casey. I'm with the Tenant Law Center. We are a program within Catholic Community Services, and we provide pre-right to counsel eviction prevention assistance. So if you are at risk of eviction, or if you have an issue with your landlord, so let's say you have repair issues, or there's a problem with your ledger, or you are looking at maybe losing your housing subsidy, we can step in and help. So there are 4 things that we're going to cover today. There's a lot, so I'll go through it pretty quickly. I can't go too in depth because there's only so much time, but I'm always happy to be a resource for folks. So you can email me, I'll drop that in the chat, and you can let me know if you have any questions. So we're going to cover some of the new laws that passed this session, some information on becoming a tenant again, some tips, and finally, of course, resources. So 3 big laws passed this past session that impact tenants. So there are links there to each of them. The last one, HB 1217, folks might know is the rent stabilization bill that became effective immediately. And then the other 2 we're going to go into, but technically none of these are codified yet in the RLTA. So normally I could say, oh, you go to RCW 59 dot blah, 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 and that's where you can find it. They're still working on that part. So jumping in. So for 5313, that is going to take effect later this month. And it adds some additional provisions that landlords are not allowed to put in leases. So as you can see on the left, there were already some lease provisions that were banned. Those were already there before this session law passed. But now the law has added these things on the right. And those things are pretty important because, you know, I don't know how many of you have seen class action waivers in leases or NDAs or all sorts of things trying to restrict tenants from basically enforcing their rights. And we don't want that to be possible. So the legislature passed a bunch of laws that said, no, we're gonna increase this list of stuff you can't put in the leases. And one thing that's also really important that I imagine a number of you come across is they can't have anything in the lease that says, I agree to pay my landlord's attorney fees except as authorized by the law and as awarded by court pursuant to a judgment. We see a lot of ledgers where folks have legal fees added and there's no court order backing that up. The landlord just said, well, I had to pay for stuff, and so now you have to pay for stuff. And it was implied in the law already that you can't do this without a court order, but now it's explicit. And so it's much easier to just show that statute to, well, in this case, the bill to the landlord or the property manager and say, look, you have to get these legal fees off of here if you don't have a court order. And if you have a court order, let me see it. And they can't make you arbitrate a dispute, which is also pretty important because arbitrators, well, there's a lot of water under that bridge, but they're not always the best place to go when you want to resolve an issue. They tend to resolve things in favor of the person who's paying them. And well, there's a lot of research on that, but I won't go too far into it. So next we have changes to the requirements of alternative service. So you have to serve somebody in one of 2 ways. One, you either physically give them that document or you leave it with a person of suitable age and discretion. That's not really defined. And there's some case law about it, but it's basically use your common sense. You're not going to give it to a 5-year-old and say that's somebody who's suitable age and discretion because a 5-year-old has no idea what you just handed them. Whereas maybe a 17-year-old is somebody who's suitable age and discretion if they seem like they have their wits about them and will get that paperwork to the adult in the household. The second way is mail and mail. And so you have to both post it to the tenant's door and mail it, both of those things. And the old rule is it had to be mailed from the county where the rental property is located. So it's very geographically limited. And they have expanded the geographical limit to be within Washington. So you don't have to be in King County if you're evicting a King County tenant, but does have to be mailed from a Washington address. And because they expanded that geographical limit, it has to be mailed by a certified mail. So no more just chucking it in the mail and saying, oh no, I promise I mailed it. No, you have to have that certified mail receipt saying, I did this, here's certified mail, here's proof. And it adds additional time before you can start doing anything against the tenant based on the notice or court documents that you served on them. And then, of course, we've got rent stabilization. So that's a pretty big one. It was effective as soon as the governor signed it, and it covers both the RLTA and MHLTA. So the RLTA is the Residential Landlord Tenant Act. The MHLTA is the Manufactured Mobile Home Landlord Tenant Act. So it covers both regular apartment tenancies, things like that, and mobile home parks. And there's the link to the bill so that y'all can read it. And this is generally how it's broken down. So you'll see it's broken down pretty similarly in both ways. And the general structure is it talks first about we're capping the rent increases, and it's 7% plus CPI or 10%, whichever, is, let's see, lower, I believe. And then we've got, so it says it adds a requirement for lease option parity. What that means is your landlord can't have more than a 5% difference in the rate that they offer you if you are trying to choose between a term lease, like a year-long lease, or a month-to-month lease. So if my landlord says, okay, it's time to renew your lease, and if you go month-to-month, then it's going to be $500 more expensive, there can't be more than a 5% difference between those two rates that they're offering. And that's actually really important because we see a lot of folks saddled with month-to-month fees. A lot of landlords argue that it's because they need to account for the uncertainty, but considering how scarce housing is right now, I'm not quite sure what uncertainty there really is because stuff's getting snapped up pretty quickly. And then the next section talks about exempt tenancy. So this law is awesome. It's an important protection. It's not as strong as folks were hoping, but it's still a really important step forward. There are some places that this just doesn't apply to. So let's say you have a building where it's been less than 12 years since the first certificate of occupancy was issued. So you only started renting less than 10 years ago. The law doesn't apply to you. Or if it's a unit owned by a nonprofit landlord. So let's say you are a C3 and you own a building and you're renting out to folks, doesn't apply to you. A low-income housing developments like LIHTC, which is low-income housing tax credit, or if you share a bathroom and kitchen with the landlord. So you're basically sharing the landlord's home with them. That doesn't apply to them. Section 103 talks about a special form that you have to use. There's a certain way that they have to give you that information now. And it's pretty straightforward. It's just broken down, and it essentially says, I am increasing your rent this much, and I am claiming an exemption, or I am not claiming an exemption, and it's supposed to give tenants enough information to understand what's going on. And then finally, it increases rent increase notices from 60 days to 90 days. So that doesn't get rid of the local rules, but previously under state law, you had to give a tenant at least 60 days, 60 days notice of a rent increase. And some places had higher requirements, like Seattle has 180 days. I'm spitballing on that one. This is why I always like to use my notes when I'm evaluating a case. So it does have that important increase, which is really helpful, but doesn't undermine any of the existing local protections. And another thing to know is if a landlord does an improper rent increase, the tenant has to give them the chance to fix it first. So your landlord is covered by the rent stabilization bill, and they give you a notice that says, I'm increasing your rent however much, and it actually ends up being about a 15% increase. Well, you have to turn around and go to your landlord and say in writing, hey, you messed up. Are you going to fix this? And you have to give them that chance. But if they refuse, then there's the potential that you could end your lease and move out. Now, it's structured quite similarly for the Mobile Home Landlord Tenant Act. And it's, as you can see, the first section is just about limits. Second section is the exemptions. And then, of course, that form that I mentioned. And then there's a move-in deposit cap, amending late fees. So it's a little bit more in-depth for the Mobile Home Landlord Tenant Act. And we at the Tenant Law Center do not do mobile home cases, but they do over at the Northwest Justice Project. However, I wanted to make sure that y'all knew this does still cover mobile home parks. And so it's important for those living in mobile homes to know that they too have rent stabilization rights. So, like I said, it's important to know that the tenant has to give that landlord the chance to fix the notice if it doesn't comply with the law, so that they can fix it, or at least have the opportunity to fix it. If they refuse to fix it, then you can terminate your lease, but you have to give them that chance to fix it first. And I really want to highlight that because I'm concerned that there are going to be people out there who say, well, my landlord increased my rent too much, I'm just going to leave. Have to take that step first. And also, so there are some exemptions if for single family home owners who are renting. Those exemptions do not apply if that single family home is owned by a real estate investment trust, a corporation, or an LLC. So if you are just a random person who's renting out an extra home that you have, okay, then rent stabilization likely doesn't apply to you. Again, you're going to want to go through the bill, make sure that you've got that all right. But if you're an LLC, because a lot of landlords set up LLCs or corporations so that there's that basically the corporate veil to protect them from liability, well, then you don't get that exemption. So you have to either rent as a human being and then you get the exemption, or you can rent as a company, but then you do not get that exemption. And then I also wanted to touch on becoming a tenant again. So as noted, there are a lot of evictions. There are a lot. 700-800 being filed per month. And it's just insane. And that can make it really hard to become a tenant again. Or even if you just, I mean, we all know there are about 1 million ways you can end up unhoused. So some important things to know for your clients that are working on finding housing. They have a certain amount of rights for when they're going through the screening process. The landlord has to tell you when you're applying, these are the criteria that I'm going to be looking at. And, you know, you might be denied for X, Y, or Z. They can't change it later on and say, oh, well, you know, I'm actually going to deny you for reason A. Okay, well, that wasn't on the list, so you can't do that. And they also, if they're going to deny you, have to tell you why. So they can't say, oh, well, we're just denying you and it's secretly because of reason A, even though the screening criteria says XYZ. No, they have to tell you why they denied you in writing. And then they also have to tell you where you can get a copy of the tenant screening report that they relied on. I always suggest that people ask for a copy of the report. It's really important because you need to know what's on there and what you're working with. And there's another important thing to account for as well. So I know that the HEN ABD training is coming up. You have to be real careful because a lot of places will try to engage in source of income discrimination. They may or may not know that that's what they're doing, but you cannot refuse to rent to somebody because of where their money for rent is coming from. They can't say, oh, well, you're in HEN, I don't want to rent to you. That's not how it works. You can't do that. And of course, there are a lot of folks who are trying to become a tenant again, and they've got rental debt because they do have an eviction on their record, or they moved out before the eviction could happen, but they still owe a bunch of rent to their previous landlord. So I highly recommend that if somebody has debt coming up on their tenant screening report, that they get a copy of that report. And then they reach out to whoever is listed as owning that debt, because the debt may have been sold to a collection agency, it may still be with the landlord, but it'll be on that credit report. And even if the tenant can't pay it all back, creating a repayment plan can be helpful, because then when you apply to an apartment and then the apartment says, well, you've got this debt to a previous landlord, actually, I have a repayment plan with them. I'm working on getting them the money that I owe them, so that I can do right by them and do what I need to do and make sure I'm covering all of my financial obligations. And that could sometimes sway the property manager to say, all right, well, in that case, maybe we do want to rent to you, because you are now establishing that you're a tenant who tries to uphold your financial obligation. Some people have a lot, tens of thousands of dollars in rental debt. I'm not a bankruptcy lawyer, but there are some resources that I'm going to share for folks who are considering bankruptcy. And you should always consult with an attorney before filing for bankruptcy. We do see that a number of folks are interested in that just because they don't know what else to do with all of that debt. And it's really going to be an individualized decision. What are the facts of your situation? How much is the debt? Can you pay any of it? Can you, do a repayment plan? There are just a lot of things to consider. And so that is an option on the table, but make sure that your client is talking to an attorney first before they do that. So as far as that source of income discrimination that I mentioned, so there's a requirement. Here's the link to the statute here at the bottom. And the statute essentially says if somebody is applying and they have a housing subsidy, then the property manager can't just say, okay, you need to make 3 times the rent and you're only getting $1,000 subsidy. Okay, well, you still need to make the other $3,500. The way that it has to work is that they deduct the subsidy and then multiply what's left, and they say that's the income requirement that they can apply to the tenant. So I've got an example here, as you can see. You've got a unit, the rent is $1,500, and you're getting $1,000 a month in a subsidy, which is awesome. The landlord says, okay, well, you have to make 3 times the rent. You have to make $4,500. That's not correct. They first have to do 1,500, subtract that subsidy of $1,000, and then you're left with 500. Then they multiply that by 3, the multiplier, and it's not $4,500 a month you have to make, it's 1,500. And we see that quite a bit, unfortunately, but we want to make sure that people are aware, because that's one of the issues that we see folks with subsidies come across quite frequently. And it's really important that they understand that they have a right to be considered in this fashion, because it accommodates the reality of their situation, versus we're going to impose all of these financial requirements on you that are not realistic for your situation and that don't take account for your subsidy. So please remember, if they're refusing to do this math, they're refusing to deduct the subsidy first, that could potentially be that source of income discrimination that I mentioned. So keep an eye out for that. I'm doing a lot of time. And then we have, tips. Please put it in writing. Always, 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 always. I know that I'm a lawyer saying this, but please always put it in writing. It is so much harder to prove a verbal conversation than it is to just say, oh, look, I've got notes right here. Or, oh, I sent an email to the landlord, 10, 15 minutes after we had a phone call and said, oh, hi, thanks for the call. It's my understanding that we agreed on A and B, but disagreed on C. Let me know if I have anything wrong. And then even if the landlord doesn't respond, have something in writing that memorializes that conversation. The landlord has had the opportunity to correct any issues or errors in your recollection of the conversation. And so you're creating a paper trail. Don't accept a promise from a landlord unless it's in writing. Just don't. Because it's just so hard to enforce that. How are you going to prove that they made that promise? If you go to court, it's going to come down to a credibility determination by the court. And do you really want to take that chance that the court's going to believe the landlord over you because you have no proof? Put it in writing every single time, every single time. Also, don't ignore communications from a landlord. If you don't know what to do or how to respond, just call us. Our phone number's right there. We no longer have a live hotline, but you can call that number and leave a voicemail, and we are getting to folks as quickly as possible. Keep copies of your rental agreement, any proof of payment. So if you're paying by money order, keep those money order stubs. We unfortunately sometimes talk to folks who say, there are problems with my ledger and I've paid all this. Okay, can you send me the proof of payment? Well, I threw that all out. I can't prove something if I don't have documents to back it up. And that's, again, why it's so important to put it in writing. You're creating that paper trail, you're establishing proof. And if you ask the landlord for a receipt, they have to give you a receipt. It's the law. So make sure that your clients know that too. Make sure you're documenting everything, putting it in writing, not ignoring communication, and you've got that copy of the rental agreement and proof of your payments. Also, you're entitled to 1 free replacement copy of your lease throughout the term of your tenancy. So if you have a year-long lease, lost your copy, you reach out to your landlord and they have to give you a copy of it. The landlord has to allow payments by physical instruments, like a check or a money order, and an address where it can be mailed or delivered. We see a lot of landlords say, we're only taking payments online. Well, that's great, but the state statute says that you have to have provide the opportunity to pay either in person or by mail. That's just the law. They have to comply with it. I understand that it maybe isn't as convenient for them, but that's the law. And if your property manager provides a Dropbox for you to submit your rent, that's always a little tough, because we talk to folks all the time who they put their payment in the Dropbox and the landlord says, well, I never got it. Take a picture of you putting it in there. Take a video of you putting it in there. Use certified mail to send it. Keep any receipts. Do whatever you can to document that you've actually done that, because Dropboxes, If you're not making sure you have proof that you submitted it, then that can be real tricky. Also, when you make a payment, your landlord has to apply that payment to rent before anything else. Another problem that I've seen quite frequently is there are a bunch of late fees, and then the landlord takes the payment, just applies it to everything, and then says, oh, well, now you're late on this month's rent because I had to pay off those fees from last month. And it just puts you in a cycle. That's not how it goes. The law says they have to apply it to rent first. And they cannot evict you for what's called a non-possessory charge. So they can't evict you for a late fee. They can't evict you for a fine, something like that. It's just, that's not allowed. And finally, landlords cannot, and this is mentioned in the bill that I talked about earlier, they cannot demand that tenants pay their attorney fees without a court order. There's no court order, they cannot put it on the ledger. They might not be happy about it, but they're the ones who chose to enter the business of being a landlord. And this is just one of the things that happens when you are in this line of work. So got to make sure you have that court order. And before I wrap up, I really want to make sure I'm talking about resources too. So there are a bunch of resources out there, and they can be tricky to navigate sometimes. So let's say you need legal help because you are thinking you're going to be at risk for being evicted, or you have some sort of issue with your landlord. We have our phone number, like I mentioned. We also have an online form where you can request help. And you just go in there, put in your contact information, tell us what your issue is, and then we are processing those every day. Northwest Justice Project and Eastside Legal Assistance Program also offer legal aid for tenants in pre-right to counsel, the pre-right to counsel space. As is implied by the Eastside and Eastside Legal Assistance Program, they do primarily cover, Bellevue and that general region, but they are able to offer help throughout King County sometimes. And so I want to make sure you know that there are 3 of us doing this work. We actually all meet regularly to make sure that, okay, you're covering this area, then we're going to cover this issue so that we're getting as much coverage as we possibly can. If your client gets documents for an eviction, so what that's going to look like is that's going to say, in and for the County of King or Superior Court of King County at the top or something, there's going to be numbers down the left side of the page. It's going to be landlord versus you. And normally have a case number. If it doesn't have a case number, you still have to respond. And that's what that's going to look like. So if your client has something with numbers on it, looks like this person that versus that person, says something like summons or complaint, those very likely are eviction documents, and you have to respond by the deadline put on that summons. There's a link right here where you can just type in your information, and it helps you generate a notice of appearance so that you don't have to worry about, oh, how do I do this? What's the form? What am I supposed to be doing? Go there, it'll help you fill out the form, and then the summons itself will tell you where to send that information, that notice of appearance form that you generate. You cannot miss any hearings, so you have to do your notice of appearance, and you cannot miss hearings, because those are 2 ways that you can automatically lose your case. And it is very, very difficult to undo that. You have to have an incredibly compelling reason. So like you have to be in the hospital or something, and that's why you missed your hearing. They won't undo it just because you didn't understand the paperwork, which the fairness of that is debatable, but that's neither here nor there. Even if you haven't heard back from the Housing Justice Project, you have to show up. And so the Housing Justice Project, the way that they are reaching folks right now is they are doing clinics every day in the Seattle courthouse and the Kent courthouse. And if you are not physically able to go to the courthouse, they've got this form down here. The link is at the bottom. And you could just say, hey, I got a summons and complaint for an eviction. I need help. I can't make it. And they'll reach out to you. They're churning through these things as fast as they can. It's actually been really impressive that despite how crazy things have gotten, that they're still pushing and doing such a good job fighting. There are some non-legal resources that I wanted to share. I know these are specific to Seattle, and this is for folks throughout King County. Unfortunately, Seattle sometimes just has more resources. So if you have, let's say, a repair issue, and it's important to know you have to submit a repair request in writing to trigger your rights under the law. So you've submitted a repair request, the landlord's refusing. Well, you can file a complaint right here and they can talk to you about, should we set up an inspection? Are there other options? There's also the Office for Civil Rights. So if your landlord is engaging in source of income discrimination or just general fun garden variety discrimination, then you can file a complaint with the Office for Civil Rights and they will make sure that they reach out to you and try to help you out. As for more specific stuff, so for discrimination, you can see there's the Fair Housing Center of Washington. They are pretty awesome. We've done some work with them in the past, and you can file complaints about discrimination there too. There's also Human Rights Commission, Disability Rights Washington, and for debt, if you are a tenant or you have a client who is a tenant that has a lot of debt, specifically from renting or really just from anything, these 3 resources are really, really handy to understand your rights and figure out what your options are. And as far as repair problems, I did note that in Seattle, you've got the Department of Construction and Inspection. But if you don't have that in your area, that's okay, because you can still contact your local code enforcement office and say, hey, I have this repair issue. It's not being handled. I need an inspection. But you have to make sure that you've done the repair request in writing first, because otherwise they're going to say, well, you just need to make a repair request to your landlord. So make that repair request, wait a little bit, contact code enforcement, and then they can come out and see what's going on, potentially even find the landlord if they need to. There is also an amazing resource called Washington Law Help, and that's run by a team at the Northwest Justice Project. They have attorneys always creating new documents, refining documents, and they have stuff on not just tenant rights, but darn near anything you can think of, family law, debt, and all sorts of stuff. So they're a really helpful resource. They have all sorts of guides, and I encourage folks to check that out. And we also do regular trainings on tenants' rights with Solid Ground. So they are twice a month in English and once a month in Spanish. And you can attend virtually. You just click that link and it'll give you a whole list of the dates we're going to do them. Every presentation is about something different. And so you can always learn something new. So I know that's pretty fast, but I would still like to answer any questions folks have.
Casey, thank you so much. That is a wealth of information and resources. There were a couple of questions from folks about sharing this presentation. We send out an email after these meetings as a follow-up, and we can share this presentation in that email. And there were a couple questions that came in through the chat, and if people have any additional questions, please go ahead and raise a hand. But one question that I had was about who is eligible to get help from Tenant Law Center or other places.
Yeah, well, every program has different income limits, just based on how we're funded. For us, it is 80% or less of the area median income, if I'm remembering correctly. For the Housing Justice Project specifically, it's 200% or less of the federal poverty limit, but they aren't able to help everybody who's eligible because there are just so many cases filed and there are only so many of them. And that's something that's important to keep in mind too, that if HJP isn't able to help, then give us a call and we'll at least want to talk through what your potential defenses are, because we want to make sure that you're not walking into that hearing empty-handed and feeling like you have no idea what's going on.
Thank you so much. We also have another question about, do the new laws that you talked about affect leases that are currently in play that people have already signed?
If you've already signed the new lease and then you're on a term lease, that rent increase is locked in. As far as whether so if you got a rent increase and then the law became effective and then your new lease is going to start soon, we don't know. There are a number of things that we don't know with how this new law is going to be shaped by the judicial branch, because there are certain things that just aren't fully clear. But we're hoping that we're going to be able to sort through some of that in the courts. There has been discussion among tenant attorneys throughout the state about, okay, what is the implementation of this going to look like? And I wish I had a very clear answer, but in some cases, we're going to have to sort of wait and see, and we're going to make the best arguments that we can. And if they stick, awesome. If they don't, then we're going to figure out, okay, what's the next best argument we can make?
Thanks. Yeah, and I think at least for the rent, the limitations on rent increases, that
Mhm.
that is in effect now. So
Mhm.
like I'm
Mhm.
renting my apartment. When my landlord offers me a new lease, they can't raise my rent more than 10%.
Yeah, I just got a rent increase last month from my landlord for renewal, and they brought it right up there to the brink of what they can ask for.
Mhm,
They always will. So yeah,
Shocking. Yeah.
yep. Any rent increase that's issued after May 7th has to comply with the law for absolutely sure.
Awesome. Thank you. One last question, and then maybe if you have some time to hang out and answer
Yeah.
questions in the chat, that would be super helpful. But what happens if a landlord like retaliates against you? Or there was one sort of specific question about a landlord like giving a bad reference after someone had to leave their apartment. What can people do if that happens? Or
That's
where
tough.
can people go for help?
So that's tough because there is technically a ban on retaliation under the law at a state. And if I will have to double check the municipal code, potentially the local, but I know for certain at the state level, it has no teeth really. You can use retaliation as a defense in an eviction case, but there is no case that you can bring against your landlord or anything based on that law. It's pretty limited. So we would encourage anybody who thinks they're being retaliated against to contact us or one of our legal aid partners to figure out what their options actually are. Unfortunately, they generally are pretty limited. So if there is retaliation, it's going to depend on what it looks like, what it's retaliation for, what exactly the landlord's trying to do as they retaliate. Like, are they trying to evict you, or are they just being a jerk to you? A lot goes into that analysis. I wish I had a clear answer, but unfortunately, that's sort of the law. We work in the gray area quite often.
Thank you, Casey, so much. Allison, we are about 4 minutes over time as it is. I'll leave it up to your discretion whether you want to ask your question.
Thank you so much. I just, I will pose it, and maybe Casey, you'd be so kind as to respond in the chat so we can move on. Thank you very, very much for the presentation and the resources. I think we all know it is a big deal to have the stabilization of rents, or as many, including the bill sponsor, have been referring to this new law, a law that prohibits rent gouging on the books. But we also know that it is not everything, and that there are thousands and thousands of units that are exempted from this. So I do think it's really useful if you could please just restate the exemptions so that folks, don't come in hot and then realize they're living in a building that actually is not covered through this law. Making changes to any law, as we know, this is just your friendly reminder, is a multi-step process. Many, many years went into passing this new law, and this law is not perfect, and it is not comprehensive, and it is not everything. It doesn't apply to all units and all renters. So just know that, and know that that's why we continue to learn, to advocate, and to seek to improve our laws. And I'm going to be the note of caution and just invite Casey to remind folks of the exemptions. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I'm actually dropping those in the chat because I made a little outline for my team. Why are you not? Oh, because it's mad at how many characters I have in there. Okay. But so let's say the property is owned by a housing authority or a nonprofit, or the landlord shares space with the tenant. Oh gosh, darn it. I'm going to get these number of characters correct. There we go. Gotcha. And those are available in the chat. Sorry, I'm having to do this in pieces, but there are limits to the exemptions. Okay, you are exempted if you're
Well, I'm so
Okay.
sorry to interrupt you, Casey. I'm the one who made us go even longer, but let's just leave it in the chat. We'll make
Okay.
sure to include it in all the follow-up, and maybe we'll have you back for a part 2.
Yeah, and I can email the outline that I put together for my team. It doesn't include the MHLTA component because we don't do mobile homes, like I said, but it's still quite similar. And there are links to the bill throughout the document. So I'll email that over to you guys. And the exemptions
Awesome.
are in 3 pieces in the chat.
Casey, thank you so much. That was you all play such a important role in helping particularly low income tenants enforce their rights. That is really a really special and important niche that Casey and her colleagues occupy. So thank you so much for coming to share all of that important information with us. We'll share more in our follow-up email as well.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And before we move on to our next delightful topic, I'd invite everybody to take a deep breath. Because y'all, we're talking about the federal government. So welcome to our advocacy portion of this meeting. We have 2 actions for folks to take today to reach out to your federal US electeds. The first of which is about funding for the Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD. HUD funds a lot of really important work, including housing vouchers, other rental assistance programs. They fund a lot of permanent supportive housing, particularly in this community. And the Congress is in the process right now of deciding how much money HUD is going to get in 2026. The Trump administration, of course, as you might expect, requested horrifying cuts. Thankfully, the first step in this process didn't have the worst of those. So it's not as bad as it could be. But there's still, the step that we're at right now, the House of Representatives Appropriations Committee is working on it. And they have put together a proposal that would cut about $900 million from HUD in 2026. So that, yeah, Amy, I see you. Amy just mouthed, "Oh my God." You're off mute, but I see you. So that's still really bad. Like, even though that's not the worst of what it could be, that's really bad. And that's unacceptable when we all know that we need so much more investment in those affordable housing resources for folks. So please go ahead, and I'll have one of my colleagues drop this action in the chat. This is from our friends at the National Low Income Housing Coalition, urging Congress to add funding for HUD and not to make cuts. The second one that we'll offer for you today is a little highly technical in nature, so I'll do my best to explain it. HUD, as we were talking about earlier, issues a lot of contracts, and King County gets something like $80 million between King County and the KCRHA. And a lot of that is used for permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing, really important housing resources for people experiencing homelessness. We get about $80 million a year. That's huge. HUD is sort of threatening to redo those contracts with new priorities. And sort of the reason that is worrisome to us is they could add new restrictions. They could decide not to fund certain things that are important. They could reduce the amount of funding that we get in this community. And they weren't supposed to do this in 2025. They weren't supposed to do this sort of rebidding until 2026. So this is really, really worrisome. So please do take this next action as well. to sort of tell your electeds to help pump the brakes on HUD, not to do this whole, redo of the system this year, and give us a little more time to sort of put our best foot forward in that respect. Okay, those are our federal actions that we have today. As ever, the best way to stay up to date on action alerts and things that we're sharing is to get on our email list. We can drop that link again in the chat. Anything maybe, Allison, that you want to add about federal stuff before we move on?
Thank you, Hallie. Well, I'm glad you had us all take a deep breath, because even though I know what you're talking about, I felt my blood pressure rising as I listened to you. Ann Oliva, whom some of you will have met, who's now the director of the National Alliance to End Homelessness, sent her email out saying this is an all hands on deck situation. You've probably heard me say that more times than you and I would like to believe, because it's one of my favorite phrases, but it really is, we know that reaching out, including to our U.S. Senators, Patty Murray and Maria Cantwell, matters. And everybody here knows people who live in other states. And I think this is a great opportunity to think about your friends, family, former college roommates and coworkers who have moved to places like Alaska, Maine, Missouri, North Carolina, Virginia, to just send them a quick note, let them know how you're doing, let them know that you're thinking of them, and remember that we are actually in this together. It is definitely not the last time that we're going to ask you to take action on this issue, but this is how important this moment is. We were asked to serve, the Coalition on Homelessness was asked to serve on a committee that the King County Regional Homelessness Authority, which supports our continuum of care, is convening to ensure that our proposal with this new NOFO is as strong as possible. But you don't probably need to think too hard to realize that what that means under this regime is putting together a proposal that excludes things that we know are not just important, are essential. Things like a focus on housing first and on racial equity. So imagine, if you will, the position that we collectively are in. We have a federal administration that is out of control and is acting as though they have a mandate to make massive changes to our nation that they really don't have. And we need to get our tax dollars back from the federal government into this community to work, to house and shelter and support our neighbors. That means that there are going to be some really difficult decisions made, even if the money stays the same, and it's probably going to be reduced. So we're in an appalling situation, but we are not stuck in the appalling situation. And one of the things that we are pledging, of course, to do with all of you at these meetings and at our senior leadership meetings, and really, this is part of our job in our sector and in our community, is to bring you the real information, to hear what you are dealing with real world on the ground, and to be those truth tellers in all directions, but also to be strategic and to make sure that our community gets the resources that we need, even under odious circumstances, so that we also deploy other resources to ensure that we are not excluding people, we are not abandoning people, and we are not going to let people become homeless. So that's my quick little, yes, it's really bad, but it is not inevitable that this is where we stay.
Thanks, Allison. One final advocacy opportunity that I want to offer to folks, and I want to pivot a little bit from federal government all the way down to our little haven of King County that we live in down here. And a couple of years ago, we passed the Crisis Care Centers levy, which many of you are probably familiar with. Now they're in the process of deciding where those crisis care centers are going to go. And there has been some backlash, as you might imagine, from some people against citing a crisis care center, particularly in Seattle and Capitol Hill. So if you support the idea of a crisis care center being set up in Seattle, or being set up in Capitol Hill, I would warmly invite you to send a note of support to the Crisis Care Center's levy team, and just share your thoughts on how important that would be to have as a resource in this community.
And Hallie, may I jump in quickly here on that? Thanks. I think I have memorized the email address, but I know it's in our notes, so I'm going to ask someone to put that in the chat. Remember, the crisis care centers are something that we, the people of King County, voted to fund through a property tax levy. And this is, again, an extremely important but still partial response to the urgent need for a better answer if someone is experiencing a crisis in their home or on the street. A better response than it's too far to get to the emergency room, we'll just try to wait this out, or call the police. The crisis care centers centers are going to be all around King County. One of them is going to be dedicated specifically to serving young people, although young people can go to any of them. And while we pass this funding, we don't actually have all of those sites identified, much less the centers up and running. The email address, and I'm really just going to suggest that everybody sends a note here, is ccclevy@kingcounty.gov. You know how we talk about a regional response to things? This is a regional response. Wherever these centers wind up being sited, and one of them is already active in North King County, they are going to be open to anyone. They're going to be open on a walk-in basis. People can self-refer. You could bring in a young person whom you know who might be experiencing a crisis. You could bring a resident or a client, or you could walk in yourself. And they are something that we can express our support for in a proactive way. So I want to just underscore, this isn't just for folks who live on Capitol Hill and who want to see that particular site move forward. We have some real hope that it is going to move forward. This is to demonstrate our collective support for the crisis care centers. And it's also going to get you on a list to be notified should there be a community meeting that you and others might want to show up for. That's the approach that we're taking. And so I really warmly encourage you to just send a quick note and say, I think it's fantastic that we're going to have centers available in our community. I want to see this happen. Let me know what I can do to help in my community. You can go into more detail if you want to, but that should do it. Thank you.
Thanks, Allison. And with that, I want to pass it off to Kevin, who's going to talk about our primary election that is coming right up.
Yes, thank you, Hallie. I do want to just kind of take another second and just bring back some of the just some of the early actions, that the links that Hallie had shared, and just put that back into the chat, because there's been a lot of great conversation since then. So there's a couple links there, and just reminding folks to use their personal email when they're filling that out. It can seem complicated, but when you click the link, it really is as simple. They try to make it as easy for you to take action as possible. So thank you, Hallie. Thank you, Allison. Okay, so moving forward with our agenda, we have some just great information to share for you all regarding the primary election deadlines and also what's on the ballot. And we'll have a few links for you in a bit here. This is information for you to share with your communities, with the clients you serve, and also for you yourselves. We talk a lot about, in this community, we know a lot about the shortfalls of services and leadership and representation. And it's just so important for us to make sure that we are aware of the deadlines as well, and also what's on the ballot so we can have these conversations. Key dates to keep in mind if you want to write them down or put them in your calendar. July, coming up for the August 5th primary election. The deadline to register via mail or online, that's the most common way that people register or update their information, same form. That's July 28th, Monday. August 5th, that is election day. You can still register, but you have to do it in person at a voting center. And of course, that goes until 8 p.m. And ballots can be dropped off. If you've already registered, you've received your ballot in the mail, that can be dropped off at a drop box at 8 p.m. Or postmarked by the USPS by 5 p.m. So just really wanting to make sure people are very aware of those upcoming dates. We'll, of course, give you some more information for the general election as that comes up. Remember, there's no stamp needed for your ballot. There is a stamp required for the registration form if you're going to be mailing that in. And as far as what's on the ballot, there's always very important things. I think oftentimes people think of the primary as, well, that's not the main one. I can sit that one out. We hear oftentimes in discourse and conversations among service providers that if only we had better representation or if only we had better options. Well, at the end of this process, it's going to be narrowed down to just a couple. So at this stage, there are many options that really represent the broader community. And there's some energy around those various options as you would expect when there is some very challenging times ahead. Some of the positions that are open or that are being voted, that you would be voting on the primary for King County is King County Executive, King County Council, 2 positions, 5 and 7, as well as a proposition for Parks Levy. In Seattle, the mayor's race is well underway, and so the primary will narrow down the options. Same with city attorney, and same with city council, position 2 and 8, as well as 9. And democracy vouchers, proposition 1 is up for renewal. If you're not familiar with democracy vouchers, I encourage you to look into it a little bit more. If you live in the Seattle area, you'll receive in the mail an opportunity to support different candidates and send your funds in their direction via the democracy vouchers. It's very much designed and intended to expand representation and really support our democracy in being fully functioning. So outside of Seattle, in King County, Shoreline has a school levy as well and a public hospital levy. We're gonna put a couple links. Oh, looks like they're already in there. Thank you. To learn more about the candidates, we've got a link for King County, and then also to learn more about the ballot measures, we've got King County elections links as well. Those are both shared by Danielle. Thank you so much. And then with that, we are going to stay on time. We are going to move forward with member announcements. To start, I'm going to have Hallie come back off mute, and Hallie has a poll for attendees. Hallie, do you want to take it away?
I think we were going to postpone that perhaps, so we might come back to that another time. But I can start us off. Actually, we might have some library folks today. I was going to say this, but if we have anyone from the Seattle Public Library who wants to share some information about your young adult resource fair, please feel free to jump on in.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. I'm Nadia. I'm the Outreach Program Manager at the Seattle Public Library, representing all of my fine folks over there. We're very excited. On Wednesday, July 30th from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. We'll be hosting a young adult resource fair. It's going to be a ton of fun with a lot of great information. So we'll have organizations and resources that are specifically geared for youth and young adults through the age of 26. And that includes enrolling in public benefits, learning about job and apprenticeship opportunities, connecting with peers, voter registration, featuring some very important partners at the Seattle King County Coalition. So we are thrilled to be able to welcome folks to, oh, one other thing I do want to share, the Department of Licensing will be there. So we'll be working with young folks who are eligible. I'll drop the information in the chat in a flyer, but we'll be able to help folks get IDs. And so that's one really important thing that I want to share. Hallie, did you have any other pieces that you want to share based on your?
No, I think that's perfect. Maybe if you could drop like the time and place in the chat so folks can share it around, that would be great. Thank you so much.
Will do. Thank you.
Yeah. And then I think do we have some folks from Mary's Place on deck? Maybe Charnay or Sherry?
Yes, we are moving into our community announcements portion. So Charnay or Sherry, if you're here, we'd love to hear from you. If you're just getting prepared, we can also make sure you have a moment at the end for your announcement.
I don't see them, but I'll go ahead and drop the flyer in the chat that we have for their event coming up, I believe on August 11th. And then we do have Scott Nelson from one of the Seattle commissions here. Oh, yay, thank you, Nadia. Scott, if you want to talk a little bit about the Seattle Disability Commission and the opportunity that you all have.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm Commissioner nominee with the Seattle Disability Commission. It is a 21-member advisory commission to the city of Seattle, as well as sometimes advocating at a larger level, either to the county or to the state on matters of disability inclusion and access. We're supported by the Office for Civil Rights through the city of Seattle. And we are just sort of in a very rapid recruitment phase right now. So I wanted to make sure to let folks know. I'm going to post kind of my spiel in the chat. You know, creating and advocating for infrastructure that vindicates people's inalienable positive rights is the work. If you're passionate about disability access and rights and be willing to share your experience working in spaces such as with homelessness, that overlap with disability access rights, please consider applying. The same goes for any of your member organizations, staff, or clients. If you have any questions, please reach out to Janet Stafford. And then I'm also going to be uploading the flyer that we've been using.
I have a copy of it too, Scott, if you need.
Yeah, I just uploaded. In particular this year, just wanted to share our main areas of focus for our work plan is advocacy, transportation, and employment. So especially if like advocacy obviously is very broad, but if in particular you have experience or passion around transportation and disability access or employment and disability access, please consider applying. But I think that's it.
Awesome, Scott. Thank you so much. Yes, so Scott has put some contact info in the chat. Please, yeah, if you, maybe it's you, maybe it's somebody that you know, would be a great fit. Would be a great fit for that. At this time, if I can ask staff to end the recording, and we will in earnest move forward with our community announcements.